Part 5. The Human Family Tree. Now that we've learned about what evolution is and how it works in previous videos, let's talk about the human family tree. Did humans really evolve? Do we have ample evidence for this, or is this just conjecture that scientists throw out after having observed evolution in animals? Well, it turns out that we have more evidence on the evolution of our own species than just about any other species on the planet. So, it looks very likely that the human species is subject to the same evolutionary processes that formed all other life on our planet. This may be surprising to many, and may feel a little threatening to the story of the creation. But, if you'll just hold off judgments for a moment, let's talk about what science can tell us about human evolution. Then, we can touch briefly on religion. Our goal is definitely not to eliminate God and the creation from the equation. Sound fair? Let's start with a commonly held belief. Human evolution implies that humans evolved from monkeys. Is this true? Hopefully, from some of the past videos, we've learned that evolution doesn't work that way. The more accurate way to say this is that human evolution implies that humans and modern-day apes and monkeys share a common ancestor. So, who is our closest living relative? To figure this out, we compare commonalities between organisms, look at DNA sequences, compare ecology, study fossils, and more. What we have learned is that the evidence suggests our closest relatives are the chimpanzees and the bonobos, us having shared a common ancestor with them about 5 to 7 million years ago. Gorillas are next, having diverged from our common ancestor 10 to 12 million years ago, and orangutans next at 15 to 20 million years ago. We share a lot of traits with our closest relative. We have 2 eyes, 4 limbs, hands and feet, hair in our bodies. We live in family groups, take care of our young in similar ways, and show emotion, memory, and social bonding. But there are some characteristics that distinguish us from chimps. What are they? Take a look at their skulls, for example. You can see some obvious differences. The chimp has pronounced brow ridges, an elongated muzzle, and large canine teeth, and a smaller brain case. Let's zoom in to the branch leading to Homo sapiens. What happened along this line? Was it a straight shot with a common ancestor morphing into something else, and then something else until we finally end up with humans? Of course not. It happened the same way all other evolution occurs, with gradual branching events and many species along the way. Our current species, Homo sapiens, arrived on the scene somewhere between 250,000 and 300,000 years ago. All of these ancestors along our family branch are called hominins. We have myriads of fossils of these guys, so we know that thriving populations of hominins existed all over the planet. But when we unearth a fossil of one of these, how do we know that it is a member of our branch and not a member of the chimps branch? Well, we look for those distinguishing characteristics between chimps and humans that we looked at before, and we decide with whom they share the most characteristics. We will take a look at a few of the most charismatic of these species in a moment. But first, what changed to make us human? Are we different than our predecessors? Do we possess characteristics that are unique to only our species? What does it mean to be human? We've asked this question of many people, and here are some of the characteristics they've come up with. Perhaps walking upright makes us unique. Well, it turns out that that trait evolved over 6 million years ago, and many of our ancestors were bipedal. One example is Australopithecus afarensis, who lived around 3.5 million years ago. You have likely heard of the species. She's been nicknamed Lucy. We have a fairly full skeleton of her. We know she walked upright. In fact, we have a really neat fossilized set of footprints from one of her kind walking through some volcanic ash along a smaller companion, maybe a child, with a 3-toed horse walking beside them. What a cute little family. What about making tools? We have found evidence of tool making in the species as old as 2.6 million years. So that doesn't uniquely define us. Homo habilis, the first of our genus, Homo, made hand axes like these. What about gathering in family groups at a home of sorts? That began to occur around 800,000 years ago, long before us. How about a larger brain? Well, it turns out there were species walking around before Homo sapiens with brain cases sometimes even larger than ours. Homo neanderthal lived all over the European continent from around 200,000 years ago to just over 30,000 years ago. They lived alongside our species for a very long time, and genetic evidence suggests we even interbred with one another. Neanderthals also controlled fire, participated in cave art, took care of their elderly, and even had some kind of religious culture, burying their dead with possessions, maybe to be taken with them to the afterlife. Communication, which we date to about 250,000 years ago, putting on clothes, which happened 70,000 years ago, and domestication of animals, which happened 10,500 years ago, all happened after the arrival of our species on the scene. But these were not the crowning achievement that made us human. It turns out that the transition from other hominins to Homo sapiens is difficult to define. So many of our primitive ancestors shared so many amazing human traits, but we are unique. We are the only species in our genus to have survived. We presumably drove all others to extinction. And from a gospel perspective, we know that we are children of God, set apart from the animals to be stewards and caretakers over them. We are spirit children of our Heavenly Father living in mortal tabernacles. Is it possible that our mortal bodies were created by God using the tool of evolution? It's certainly a possibility, and as we learned from a previous video, our doctrine does not preclude this idea. Is it possible that Adam and Eve were a special case prepared independently of these other creatures and placed directly in the Garden of Eden? Certainly that is also possible and doesn't contradict the scientific evidence, as long as we allow for the existence of all of these other species at some point in the creation of man. Ultimately, the Lord has not chosen to reveal how our bodies were created, and that's okay. The scientific evidence is strong that many primitive human species existed and thrived on our planet before Homo sapiens, and that Homo sapiens, our species, share a tremendous amount of similarity with them and with other living species on our planet. Assuming that our bodies evolved like all other species on Earth makes it possible for us to create many modern miracles of medicine. And so we use that as our underlying assumption in science. However, the role of our loving Heavenly Father in that process and the details of Adam and Eve currently remain a mystery of God to someday be revealed.